Hello and welcome to ACTV 20's Health Matters. I'm Dr. Eric Parks and we're filming in conjunction with Atwood Video Productions. I'm here today talking about a subject that I think is incredibly important because it's probably one of the most common conditions in this country. It's also one of the most commonly misdiagnosed and poorly treated. So when I found my guest willing to talk about this subject, I was overwhelmed. I'm just so excited to introduce Deborah Barbarick today, and she is a body worker, massage therapist, but she also has a unique understanding and a willingness to help people with a condition called fibromyalgia. So if you have that, or I'm sure you know somebody who does, listen carefully, take notes, and be sure to make contact with Deborah if you'd like to have some more information. So I want to welcome you, Deborah, and my guests, Sandra and Mary Beth. We're going to talk a little bit about their experiences too. So Miss Deborah, I'll call you Miss Deborah, tell us a little bit about your background. What got you into body work and eventually led to where we are today?
I've been interested in body work since I was a teenager. Back in the old hippie days, I got my first massage book and I just became fascinated by it. And I also was very interested in touch, because I don't think there's a whole lot of that in our country, just hugging and warmth and all of those things. And I ended up living about 31 years in Brazil, which is a place where they have it's a very warm culture. And I ended up doing a lot of my own healing process through body work, massage, and the more somatic, emotional kinds of therapies. So that's how I got interested in it, and I was trained in Brazil. And then I came back to the United States and I got interested in it again because my dad was very sick. He was in bed for 6.5 months in a hospital. And I watched the physical therapist bring him back to kind of life. And I also watched a body worker friend of mine, him getting massaged 3 times a week, how he ended up just being able to walk and move and pretty much get back to normal again.
Well, that's a heck of a beginning, and I know in Brazil, South America, there are some techniques that are typically not taught here. I've learned some of them through my experience. So you've had some experience with the hands-on, obviously, but also how about organ manipulation, those kind of things? Did they get into any of that?
In Brazil?
Yeah.
I studied in a school called Energy Dynamics of the Psyche. So it was somatic emotional body work. And what we did, we looked at character structure. We looked at how people hold emotional patterns in the way they develop posture. So we would work with people to try to make those patternings flexible in order for them to be better emotionally. So that was my training in Brazil.
So much to that, having a mind-body connection there and helping people to bring that to their consciousness and see change really is dramatic. It helps people come to that connection between those two. Well, I do know a lot about your work, and some of the things that you can do would definitely want us to have another show. But what we want to do now is focus a little bit more on this condition known as fibromyalgia. So maybe people have heard this term, fibromyalgia, but what does that mean? Is that a diagnosis of a disease? Is that a combination of symptoms? We don't really know sometimes. So can you give us your feeling, your observation of what fibromyalgia really is?
Yeah, this all started because I had a client that came into my office, and she was in an acute flare-up and had just been diagnosed with fibromyalgia, and she was in so much pain that she couldn't even lay on my table. It was like her skin hurt just to touch a table. And I couldn't do anything to help her. I couldn't touch her, and it really, really upset me. So I went home and I just started looking things up on internet, just randomly, and I was really, really upset. And I found this protocol from Medical Massage magazine, and it was from the Ukraine. And they had this very common sense approach to fibromyalgia. And what they said was that they didn't believe that taking medications, there's a big thing that fibromyalgia shows, serotonin depletion, blah, 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 blah. that they didn't believe by taking these drugs or taking serotonin that that would really help, that fibromyalgia was a condition that had occurred over time.
Right.
And they looked at it like this, that trauma in the body, any kind of trauma, emotional, mental, or physical, over a long period of time, creates a chronic reaction, a contraction in the body. And this kind of chronic contraction over time creates an inflammatory response because the body can't get blood to the cells. The cells are starving of blood. The whole body's building up toxicity. Mm-hmm. And when that happens, the body starts to register pain, like we talked about,
right.
registers pain. And this chronic pain that the person is feeling, because there's something going wrong in the body, causes them to get into all kinds of distress. They can't sleep. And then it's just a cascading effect. And then the neurotransmitters in the brain, the serotonin, blah, 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 a whole bunch of things gets depleted. And then you just get very, very sick. And it goes round and round.
It's a vicious cycle
It's
at
a
that
vicious
point.
cycle.
Yeah. Well, you touched on a subject we talked initially about off camera, but inflammation, we understand, is the underlying condition that allows fibromyalgia to be a condition that's diagnosable. Even though there's no lab tests that say you have this, if you have pain that migrates and you have it in a number of different places, you're diagnosed with that condition. So fibromyalgia is something that has the underlying cause of inflammation, which anytime you have inflammation, it doesn't matter if you stub your toe or if you fall down some stairs or if you have, like you said, some emotional stress or chronic stress, the body goes into a state of inflammation. And inflammation always causes scar tissue. It's just the way the body heals. If you break an arm or sprain an ankle, the body uses inflammation to bring those needed elements to heal that place, which then, as any construction person knows, you just take the scaffolding down when you're done healing. Well, if that inflammation never resolves, now you're ending up with a condition where you have more and more scaffolding, scar tissue, which limits your movement, causing more and more pain. So that was why I thought it was so interesting that from the perspective of body work, now we're actually talking about physically helping people with those, breaking down those bonds from the scar tissue, which is physical and also metaphoric for helping people with the emotional tie to the pain.
Yes.
So you have some great successes there. How do you find that fibromyalgia manifests in the people that you see? Now, you told us about a patient that could hardly get on a table, or a client that could hardly get on a table. What other things do people come to you with that have been told they have fibromyalgia?
Yeah, I saw, and we're going to talk to my two dear friends here in just a second, I just saw patterns. There had been a long-term stress, a long-term for many, many years, and it kind of meant there would be this real contraction, hardness in the body, just kind of all over the place. And they had things in common. You know, both of them had incredibly tight necks, you know, the base of the neck. They had the tender points. They had all of those things in common. They had sleep issues. They just had all of these things in common. And so the protocol that we found from the Ukraine, it just said, we're going to do a study. We're going to do 40 massages, 15 once a week, 10 days off, 15 more once a week, wow. 10 days off, then 10 more once a week, and see what happens. And in the middle of that, we'll introduce exercise. So the thing that I found is they always say massage helps fibromyalgia. They just don't get enough. That's all.
I see. So once a month probably isn't enough to change the course.
Yeah.
So is that kind of the protocol that you use?
Yes. Yeah. And they give a it's deep tissue. I'm a neuromuscular therapist, so that's very deep tissue. We also look at postural patterning, so we can see where probably they're going to have the most things tied up in this area. But I just followed. They started out with the neck and the back, and then just went to different areas. And they also said, which happens in fibromyalgia, they would probably flare the first couple of days. Not everybody does, but maybe about 40%. My two friends didn't have much of a problem. You know, they did,
right.
So.
Well, just a little bit of history. We talk about people who are under stress, and you mentioned the physical stress, mental stress, emotional stresses. And historically, and we're talking 10,000 years or more, when people were under chronic stress, the body would know that it's in starvation. And so it would create changes in the body to help you store fat and so forth. So when you have acute stress, the body wants you to guard your vital organs. And so physiology books talk about this. People in acute stress, their flexor muscles will tighten, their shoulders will come in. And this is a condition we see people under stress. You don't see people with a lot of stress walking around open, and they contract in on themselves. And that condition, if not resolved, results in the chronic state that then is diagnosed as fibromyalgia, because it does help. It causes the neck to hurt, it causes the back muscles to tighten as it's trying to hold you up. All these things over time, like you were saying earlier, creates a vicious cycle. And that vicious cycle then leads to this chronic pain. So we talked a little bit before about some things that help address the physical aspects, which you're going to talk a little bit more about, but there's also the emotional and mental part, and I think there was a nutritional component in here as well.
Yes.
Is that part of the Ukraine's
It wasn't part of their technique,
Oh, okay.
but we incorporated it when we were working together, because I have that background,
Right.
and my two colleagues, they had that great understanding. And they both they did the work. That's the thing, it's about self-healing, isn't it?
Right. Yeah.
So we always looked at this, I'm not healing you, we're partners in getting better.
Very good. What is a little bit, just give us a taste of what the nutritional side of that is too. I just want people to know that there is more help.
You guys want to talk about that a little bit? About how you changed your diets and stuff?
Sure. Basically, Deborah asked me, do you want to start this nutritional part of the program? And I said, absolutely. It was about clean eating. It was about cutting out the GMOs. It's organic meats, if any, a little less meat, just organic foods in general, better water. And what I noticed when I really looked at my diet, I had a lot of work to do. So when I rather quickly implemented what Deborah suggested, I noticed a tremendous change in my body. So it was a blessing that she decided to take that next step.
Now, I'm going to add this because we talked about this before. Metaphorically, when you have chronic pain and you have a buildup of the waste products that Deborah was talking about, they accumulate, like garbage would accumulate in your kitchen. If you never took the garbage out, it would start to stink in there, and I mean, it would be a mess. It'd be hard to work in there. It slows everything down. Well, that's the same process that's going on with fibromyalgia. The body has all this waste it's trying to get rid of, but because of the tension, the scar tissue, all this, blood vessels can't get rid of it fast enough. So if you're adding to that load with poor diet, eating food with hormones in it, and all these things that your body has to additionally attend to, now you've created a difficult hurdle for the body to resolve. So I appreciate that aspect of looking at diet as a way of helping the body stay clean while you're helping to break down those barriers to movement and all that. How about you, Sandra?
The thing that really struck me was that the complex carbohydrates and sugar that I was eating was actually adding to the inflammation. It was like, wow, I didn't understand that, and so that was like a really light bulb moment for me.
Did it change when you stopped eating all that?
Yes, it did, and my taste buds changed too.
Do you still continue to eat in the manner that you started out with the treatment?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I've upped that in that my doctor suggested I use a jungle diet, which is everything you find in the jungle: meat, fish, plants, fruit. That he says, you eat that, you'll get skinny. So that's what I'm working on.
Let me know how the snake is, would you? Well, I'm interested in if you're willing to share a little bit about the body work itself. I mean, what are you looking for? And part of this is I want our audience to be able to take away a little bit about what they can do for themselves or their partners or friends who may have been diagnosed with fibromyalgia, what are some of the things that you are able to teach the people that you work on? Home care, for example, especially body work that they can do, sleep positions, all that.
Yeah. So in the protocol, we kind of put together a little sort of kit. And one of the things they did is they kept a journal. So they kept a journal where they were really in touch with what was happening to them. And then they brought me information. And so we would kind of have this partnership of working on things. Another thing they did is we had like these little jack balls, which are great, little soft jack balls. And so you have these tender points that all over the body.
Right.
So they would take their little jack balls every day and they would do this little massage, just kind of circular massage on their tender points, and then rub it in. And you just do that. You don't have to do that very much, and it starts to feel better. So they did that.
Nice.
And another thing they did is they both, in their own way and how it felt right for them, they brought movement into their lives. So whether it was going to the gym or learning to take walks again, as they started feeling better, they just added more movement. So that was kind of, that was the things that they did at home and that we partnered with together.
So you had mentioned the Ukraine, the information you received from the Ukraine also included starting a program. Was it specific, like how much you have to walk or how much improvement you'd had to make in your movement?
They didn't really say that. They just said about halfway through the program to start introducing movement. So we really, this was just the sort of this thing that came from the Ukraine, and then we just started developing it together, the three of us.
So walking would be fine, right?
Walking's one of the best medicines. My craniosacral teacher says that if we could wander in the woods for 2 hours a day, we'd all probably be really healthy. So walking, I think, is just one of the best exercises that any person could do. A simple, wonderful thing that we're all supposed to be doing, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. And if you can't walk, I mean, there's other ways of moving. You can swim, or you can, I don't know, doing housework even is good exercise. I know it wears me out. But, yeah, that's great. So you have these different things. Now, what about if there is an emotional aspect that come up? And I know sometimes we not hide necessarily intentionally, but there are emotional connections to our physical tension. And so do you find that the body work helps release that, or just become aware of it, or is there a separate technique to help people with that?
Yeah, I think that if the therapist has that understanding, has that deep understanding and training and that empathy, and you can have that conversation with your client and build that kind of trust, that definitely is that's going to be part of the process. Because touch does bring up a lot of things.
Absolutely.
Maybe Sandy, you could talk about that a little bit, about your experience.
The emotional aspect of it?
Yeah.
Well, there was a lot of stress in my life, abuse, alcoholic marriage, and all that kind of added up to where I was in a constant flight or fight mode.
Right.
And my body, even though I went to therapy, didn't know how to relax. My muscles were always contracted. And when I went to Deborah and I laid on the table, I couldn't really lay on the table. I was kind of hovering above the table. And through the massage, my muscles learned how to relax again. It was amazing. I mean, if I hadn't have lived it, I wouldn't have believed it, because the doctor said, there's nothing to be done, you won't die, it won't make you cripple. But I knew this, my brain was healed through therapy, and yet my body hadn't caught up. And then Deborah says, hey, how about if we try this? And I'm like, I'll try anything, because I didn't want to do the drugs. And it was just amazing. I mean, anybody out there, if they have fibromyalgia, have got to try it, because it's great to have your life back, to not feel like every day you have the flu.
Right.
It's just awesome.
So you're advocating that if people have had fibromyalgia, been diagnosed, to use the body work perhaps in conjunction with some counseling, or is it, do you think?
That was my journey.
Yes.
So, everybody has their own journey, but for me, I got my thinking and my brain straightened out, but my body didn't catch up.
Right. How about you, Mary Beth? Are you willing to share a little bit about that?
The emotional part of it, I didn't even realize I had buried somewhere inside me until Deborah got her healing hands on me. And there was one day in particular, about 8 massages in, where I just started sobbing, and she just held space for that for about a half an hour. I had no idea that was pent up inside me. And through this protocol, I got my life back.
Yeah, you mentioned that you take care of quite a bit of a farm there by yourself, and
oh well, that's all done. That was about 3 years ago. Yeah, that was completed. But I have a family, and I have my own business, and I have grandkids, and it's just so rewarding to be able to do everything with them.
right.
When before most days I didn't do anything. My family didn't know that. Get the kids off to school, I'd go back to bed because it felt like fire was running through my veins.
Oh boy.
It was not pleasant. And so I happened to run into Deborah one day, and we chatted. I said, "What are you up to?" She told me, and she didn't know I had the fibromyalgia. And 2 days later, I went to her and I said, "Can I be part of your study?" And she said yes, and I was so glad she did.
So you changed your diet as well. I mean,
I did,
we talked
yes.
a little bit about that, but what did you find most helpful? I mean, were you onto the sugar thing too? Or?
Not so much the sugar. Mine was the salt and the fats. So when Deborah and I chatted, she said, "Well, you might want to, maybe switch up to this, switch up to that." And I went on the internet, and she just had so many good recommendations. And when I did that, that's when I really noticed there was a change in my gut. And once the gut felt better, it was like a flower blossoming. All the components, when they came together at that magic moment, I just said to my husband, I have my life back. So I'm looking forward to skiing again this year. I haven't skied
Fantastic.
in 28 years. Yeah, we were avid skiers. And I just told him I'm going. So I'm excited, really excited.
Well, that really is getting your life back.
It
and
is.
I think that there's so much evidence that medications merely cover up the symptoms and never really address the causes, the underlying causes of the chronic stress, the physical, emotional, and chemical breakdowns that occur because of this condition. And so we can't deny that the condition exists, but we can say that if we have something that helps these conditions, certainly we should be pursuing those. And I'm not saying that medications don't help people feel better, because they do, but I think that we can acknowledge that perhaps those shouldn't be relied on as a way of resolving a condition that you guys have had great success with, and I know that Deborah has also helped other people with as well. So these are not those anecdotal things. These are real. These are real people. You guys are seeing this, and I know that there are people going to have questions. So I'm hoping Deborah will be willing to field some of those questions in the future from our audience and perhaps their families and friends.
Aaron, one
Yes.
thing I wanted to say is I just wanted to point out that they had been sick, one for 18 and one for 20 years.
Oh my.
And another thing I just wanted to say to massage therapists and body workers is we're really afraid, we're taught to be afraid of fibromyalgia in massage school. Oh, you can't touch them, or they're going to flare. And the thing that happened with me, I was so upset by that client. And when I got that protocol, I says, gosh darn it, I'm just going to try it. If I could just find a couple of guinea pigs, willing guinea pigs. And Sandy actually came in on a Groupon. And then I find out she has fibromyalgia. And I says, hey,
The
you wanna
universe is
try?
speaking to you.
Yeah, do you want to just try this with me? And what I actually did was I paid for half and she paid for half. And we said, if this works, then maybe we can help other people.
Yes.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
massage therapists, just don't be afraid. Your good work
Yeah.
And the emotional aspect, it's important to learn to know how to hold space.
Well, since
So-
you brought it up, if there are other massage therapists who are watching and are interested in pursuing this as a way to help their clients, how would they get in touch with this Ukraine protocol? Should they contact you?
Yeah, just
or-
contact me. I'll send it to you.
Oh,
You
okay,
know,
good.
we've been doing that. And we're also planning a little course at Forever Enlightened.
Yes. in
And just
Auburn.
inviting other massage therapists to come and learn the protocol so we can get it
Fabulous.
out there.
Yeah.
And the money that people pay is going to go to a scholarship because our whole dream is helping one woman at a time.
Wow, that's a great thing. Do you have any dates yet? Or?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Okay, but
But we will.
But you will have to be in touch. So
Yes.
make sure, at the end, we're going to have a website that's for contacting Deborah and getting more information about these events to help yourself, your friends, your family. Now, I would like to kind of wrap up by saying there's so many things that we can offer to help it, but we have to know specifically what people are going through. It's not a one-size-fits-all. It's not a protocol that just works the same for everybody because, as you mentioned, we all have our journey. And so is there a couple other stories, and you don't mention names, but any other stories that people might relate
Yes.
to
Yes.
that will help bring
Yes.
people into this?
I had the client that came in that was so sick, the one that just got me interested in this first place. I called her a few months ago, and several months after I had spoken to her, and I actually had sent her to Lenny O'Flanagan,
Oh, yeah.
first of all, because I think that's really important for us to, if we feel like we can't help, if we know somebody who can, and I've sent, my brother's been to you,
Yes.
send them to people, help people. And so she went to Lenny, and that helped her quite a bit, but she still feeling pretty sick. So she found a herbalist in Roseville, and this herbalist found out that she had been traveling, I think it was Africa or South America, and they did some testing. She had a terrible parasite load.
Oh.
So they treated her for that, and her fibromyalgia symptoms disappeared.
Well, obviously that just hits the point where, there are so many different things that can cause fibromyalgia. It's not just falling down the stairs. It's not just chronic stress. It's sometimes infections.
Yes.
And so it's really important to work with a variety of professionals to help with these conditions. So I appreciate you being open to referring people to use a network of people who are familiar with these. And by golly, I want to encourage our audience to connect with Deborah if your family members have this condition or have been told that they might have it. So with that, I'm going to conclude by saying thank you very much for tuning in. We will always provide you the latest and greatest in the complementary and alternative healthcare fields. And again, thank you to Deborah Barbarick and her friends, Mary Beth and Sandra. Thank you and good day.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.